Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Performance Cafe. Wow, we've just had the coldest week in winter, and I think Monday was the coldest year in 12 years, the coldest day in 12 years. It is freezing. I'm so glad to be here at the cafe with a warm cup of coffee. I'm going to hang on to it for a bit to keep my hands warm. So today I wanted to talk about something really interesting, and we've been talking a lot about accountability and, how do we ensure that, how do we hold other people accountable? How do we ensure accountability? How do we hold ourselves accountable? How do we make sure that we say that we're going to do as we do? And we spoke about some benefits of accountability. So it's something that we really do want to focus on because it is actually good for us. But I keep on coming back to one thing that I think we haven't spoken about, and that's the impact of personality on accountability. Often I will work with managers and they'll say, oh, we've got some people, they're so needy, they're so dependent. We've got people that they just run off half-cocked and just do their thing and they don't come back to us. We get things like there are people who they don't deliver consistently, right? They just don't give us what we need when we need it. And I think for all of those things, there are 1,000 reasons why those happen. And a lot of them we've spoken about in our accountability model. But I wanted to take a look at some aspects around accountability, and let's talk through the impact of personality. So, for example, and I'm going to use the Enneagram today just because I am a registered Enneagramist, and therefore that is probably the personality tool that I know the most about. Having said that, all the examples I'm telling you also comply with a lot of strengths work that I do. So you'll see that it's actually quite broad, so it can fit a lot of situations. So the first thing that we preach with accountability is clear expectations. We're talking about things like specific instructions, specific standards, maybe measurable targets. And it sounds so logical, right? So just for those of you who want to know, I'm a 7 on the Enneagram. So I am a little bit of an enthusiastic visionary. Under stress, I'm more likely to go to the strict perfectionist, the 1. And then when I'm in my happy place, I am, of course, the specialist. So what happens is that, to me, the logic, I'm a thinking type. To me, it makes so much sense to have really specific instructions, really good standard setting, and measurable targets. We're going to get this, we're going to do it. So for a 7 like me, that might make sense. But here's the interesting thing. There are types that actually need more wiggle room, that want a little bit more creativity, that want to understand, how does this relate to people, how they feel, how they interact. For example, there might be people who don't like having such specific instructions because they want a bit of room to play. Now, the irony is, and I want to lead with this as well this morning, is as I talk about myself as a 7, as an enthusiastic visionary, I want us to understand that there's wiggle room within all these profiles. So if you see me, don't assume every 7 you ever meet afterwards will be the same, right? We all have our own flavor and our own way of interpreting that. They're just a couple of things in our profiles that really resonate with us. And so the enthusiastic visionary can be quite a fun, loving thing, right? They enjoy having fun, having adventures. And so the moment that you say to me, please, will you complete the following admin within the specific time frame, and I want to make sure that everything is in proper sentence case. Ooh, so as much as I like those specific standards, as much as I like to know where I'm going, I also need a little bit of fun. I have a friend who's a 4, and the 4 will want to say, but hold on, I'm a very creative person, and I want to also have input on how this looks. How does this come together? How does this work, right? And when I say creative, 4s are known sometimes for artistic creativity. That is one of their biggest gifts. But also there can be intellectual creativity in there as well. When we take a look at other types like 2s and 6s, they want to just know, how does their contribution fit in and impact other people and the bigger picture? So from this, we've been talking about something like clear instructions. I thought it was pretty clear. I don't know about you. But do you see how when communicating, you should have the clear expectations in accountability? But can you see how when communicating and when building those out and when involving people, how much we can actually pull in their personality so that they can make it their own? And I think that is exactly why I wanted to have this chat with you today, just to highlight that sometimes just saying so isn't good enough. No matter how clear you set that expectation, no matter how much people understand their roles, there is a little bit of personality that we need to keep in mind. Let's take another example. So in accountability, we speak a lot about feedback and how we give and receive feedback. And so it's a really interesting thing that some of the Enneagram types, like the 8, enjoys feedback, and they can take quite blunt and forthright feedback. Sometimes they have very often 8s have a very sort of like a straight and direct view of the world. So give it to me, I can deal with it. I'm going to take it and I'm going to fix it. And so they can take quite direct feedback, but they prefer feedback from people that they believe are capable of giving the feedback. So it has to be, they can only be held responsible by equals and people that they feel will give them feedback. Now, remember, I'm talking about a flat 8 on a profile. Other 8s might be slightly different. There's room for wiggle room. Ones love respectful and supportive feedback. You know, they like doing things properly. They like to know what's expected because they're going to do that to the best of their ability. But then we've got other types, like 2s, that prefer collaborative accountability. 9s can sometimes fall in there as well. And what these types like is a supportive, collaborative environment. Less about holding one single person accountable, more about holding the team accountable, and then holding someone accountable for subsets of stuff, but still within the team context. We find that these are types that really enjoy being around other people, working with other people, and they want this whole sense of team togetherness. And so from that perspective, they really enjoy when feedback is given with kindness, with caring, with insight to their emotions. And so it'll be no big surprise to you if I say that when it comes to personal responsibility, those that like that creative accountability, those that like the supportive environment, and those who have this whole sense of team prefer group responsibility over personal responsibility. Now, often we could say, well, are they trying to dodge responsibility? Do they not want to be held responsible? It's not about that at all. It's that their world consists of others, of connection. And so it's very difficult for them to disconnect sometimes and just be entirely on their own. But when we take a look at those 1s and 3s, we haven't spoken much about the 3. The 1, the 3, the 5, these are people, they prefer to hold themselves accountable. They're the kind of people that if you don't watch out, they'll run off and hold themselves so accountable that they will be harder on themselves than you might be on them as a leader. Sorry, let me just get a swallow. Sorry, hiccup. So they want to hold themselves accountable. And they really work from a perspective of there needs to be autonomy in a role and there needs to be trust. And they want to manage themselves. These are people who we very often see loving the work from home scenario because they also often tend to be quite independent workers. Doesn't mean they don't want to interface, but often they will have a preference to work on their own. I think the biggest of these is probably the 5, and that's our quiet specialist. And our quiet specialist is someone who enjoys going internally and being in their head and learning and thinking. And often they enjoy doing that just by themselves. Then something else, acknowledgement and appreciation. I don't even know if we've discussed that around accountability. But what's really interesting is that we don't always think of it that way, but some people will want acknowledgement and recognition in front of others, and some won't. So let's take a guess. Let's see. The 8. The 8 is quite happy to get public recognition, reward and recognition. And so will the 2. And the 2 is the helper. And the 2 will love appreciation and recognition for their efforts, but only for the impact they have on others. It's quite interesting. They always come back to that otherness. On the opposite end, that 5, the quiet specialist we just discussed, the 5 doesn't necessarily care for public shows of appreciation and recognition. They do want to be recognized for what they've done. It's very important, but they want it in private, a handshake, a discussion. Maybe a manager takes me out to lunch or a cup of tea, whatever the case may be, but they might not be up for open displays of recognition. As are our 9s. And the 9s really, they have the sense of they want to fit in, they want to be part of something bigger, but they would prefer a quiet approach to recognition. The other thing is, and this comes back to that example of why is this person so needy? Well, one of the things is, how often should I be checking in? Now, no surprise, we already spoke about the 1s and the 5s, and that they actually like to work quite independently. Sometimes 3s in there as well. But actually, 3s enjoy check-ins and progress updates. They enjoy guidance and monitoring of their advancement towards goals. They don't want to be micromanaged, but they like it when someone dips in and says, hey, how are you doing? Are you all right? Are you achieving your goal? Is there something I can do? I saw you did this great last time. And so from that perspective, I think we'll once again see that check-ins can be a bit of a thing. So for example, our 6s, our 9s, they might want regular check-ins to help guide their progress. On the other side, we have our, as we've said, our 1s and our 1s and our 5s that might do with less. And I think it's so important that when we take a look at confrontation, and I don't like to associate accountability with confrontation, but I do know that often it is perceived that way and we can come across that way. When we take a look at confrontation, our 9s are going to be the least likely to do well with confrontation. Amazingly enough, 7s don't mind the confrontation, but they'll feel hurt. So watch out how you approach them as well. On the other hand, you can imagine, remember I said 8 had that direct input. It just wants to know what to do and keep going. Well, actually direct input and confrontation actually don't bother the 8 as much. And they might find it clearer just to know what's going on and move on. As comfortable as they are with confrontation, they also don't mind bringing it on. So that is just something to keep in mind. Right. Emotional support and understanding. Again, I think something that can be tied to the word neediness that we're so negative about. All that these people are asking is, when you speak with me, see me as a whole person with my well-being and my emotions as part of me. And there we've got the 4 again. The 4 is really beautifully connected with their emotions, and that's what they need to understand. That's what they need you to understand about how you breathe them, how you give them feedback. Remember, it's this connectedness to their emotions that makes them such absolutely amazingly creative beings. So if we remove the emotions, we've got to remove the creativity as well. So by not supporting that need, what are we losing in the process? Right. The 6s love their support and their collaboration, not just with you, but with everyone in general. And then we have 9s that like open dialogue and collaboration. They want to not just know what they need to do, they want to know what everyone needs to do, because nines are really good at slotting in and fitting in with what needs to get done, but they need to see the bigger picture. And I can actually carry on for quite a bit. But I think it's time for us to loop back with, how does this affect accountability? So, okay, Innocent, what you're saying is, I've got all these individuals in my team, and I actually have to cater to each of them individually, and that's going to take forever. Well, actually, if you sit down and ask people, what's important to you? And really, it's a cup of tea conversation, right? It's not something that you need to labor. Then you know how to refine your communication and your way of working to get the best out of that person. Because you see, if you understand that and you can get them going well, they will become more and more independent as they go along, because they feel there is that trust. They feel there is that support. They feel there is that background. And then combining this, understanding the needs of each individual, with organizational safety that we spoke of last week, they'll be open to coming back to you when there's a problem, and hopefully even before the problem arises, so that they can be accountable, but in their own unique way, without it negatively impacting your environment. So the long and the short of it is, we can't just manage a team. We have to manage individuals. And in the process of managing individuals, it is important for us to understand what each of those individuals need. And what's really interesting is in Enneagram and in strengths coaching, when we start doing teamwork and everyone understands what everyone needs, so we have really good discussions about how each personality or each set of strengths shows up and what they need, people in the team can start supporting each other that way. So the support goes beyond just what one manager can do to how everyone supports each other. And when we're all supporting each other, then there's a higher probability of accountability. I hope you found this useful and enlightening. I hope that you give me a call so that I can help you with the personality assessments and strengths assessments you may need. But if you've enjoyed the stream and you might not be able to use this particular episode, we are looking, and you're looking for more, we record these and upload them after the fact as videos on YouTube and Facebook. And our related articles can be found on the website performforward.com, and the live streams themselves are held on LinkedIn every Wednesday at 9:30 SAST, that's GMT -2. If you have any questions or suggestions for topics, please do leave a comment on your platform of choice, and of course, I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Until then, I'll see you next time at the Performance Cafe.